the way so I can hang out with all you lovely folks. And if you have any questions along the way, you can raise your hands, give me a shout, and I'd be happy to answer those for you. But to start things off, Manny took a preheated metal pipe, went to our main furnace and scooped out what we call a gather of molten glass from that 2100 degree furnace. That glass starts off crystal clear. Even though it looks orange, it's just because it's really hot. When it cools, it will become crystal clear. But Manny doesn't want it to be clear, so he was just rolling through a tray here, and this tray is filled with crushed up pieces of colored glass that we call frit. Now, the different colors we get in the frit is given to us by using different metal oxides to create it. So if we use, for example, iron oxide, we'll get green, or on this one, which I believe is a nice blue, it's probably some type of cobalt oxide. But those colored pieces stick to the surface very easily because the molten glass heats them up so quickly, they stick right to the surface. Then, using the heat from our reheating chamber, he can melt all those pieces into the surface, making for a nice homogeneous piece of glass. Once he's got that fully melted in, he'll begin to shape and puts it back. And now that the glass is shaped, he just blew in the end of the pipe, and if you saw the glass expand there, that was the bubble forcing its way into the glass. And that is the basics of glass blowing. You get the glass, you shake the glass, and you blow into the glass. However, this is really just the beginning, and that's why we refer to that bubble as a starter bubble, because every single piece along the wall here started off just like that, as a little bubble of glass. Now that he's got the bubble and it's the right shape, he's allowing it to cool down to about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which will make that glass nice and stiff and stable, and that will allow Manny to go back in the furnace to gather up more material. So I'm going to run a little animation here while he goes to the furnace. This is kind of an inside look at the gathering process. So Manny dunks the bubble into the bowl of molten glass, he rotates in one direction, scooping up another layer on top of that bubble, and he comes out with about 3 to 4 times the amount of glass he just had. However, that glass is pretty oddly shaped, right? And we want it to be nice and uniform before he blows again. So he uses a larger block to reshape that glass, making it nice and even. And while he's reshaping it, the bubble underneath is absorbing all that new heat, so it's becoming malleable again. Now, these blocks that we use are made of specifically fruit wood, not just any kind of wood, and that's because fruit wood is really dense. So compared to most other types of wood, fruit wood is going to last a lot longer, it'll take more time before it burns away, but it also has less sap content than most other types of wood, and that makes sure that the wood tool doesn't leak sap all over the glass and get really gross. Now, Manny was just using another tool there on the bench. This pad that he was holding is actually newspaper. It's about 8 sheets of folded up paper soaked in water, and it works just like the wooden block. It allows Manny to shape that glass however he sees fit. Now, this metal tool that he's using, this is called a pair of jacks. And those jacks are really useful. They're actually one of the most versatile and useful tools that we have at our disposal. And Manny just used them to make what we call a jack line. Named so because he used the jacks to make a line. We're very creative when we name things here in the glass industry. That's why we're glass blowers, and we call ourselves glass blowers, because we blow lines. But that line that he made, that jack line, is really important because that line is the same as the lines in a chocolate bar. It's an intentional weak point that the glass can be broken on once he's ready to break it. He puts the line in there now, so it's there and ready for him to use, but you can see he's really focusing his work on that lower half. He blows that bubble out nice and wide on the bottom, giving himself lots of volume. And they're going to continue shaping that lower half of the bubble for now. So, they're about ready to add some more glass to this. So when we make a glass piece, it doesn't always have to be made out of one uniform piece of glass. We can also add different things to it. Here, they're about to add on a piece of glass to become the foot. So Michael gets some glass from the furnace, he gathers up some material, he's going to bring that over to Manny. Manny's ready to accept it. The glass is the right temperature. Once that strand of glass gets thin enough, its own heat will just melt it apart. We call that casting off. But now that they have applied the glass for the foot, they have to shape it. So Michael helps him out by using a wooden paddle to flatten the glass as he shapes the side of it, making a nice classic puck foot, as we call it. But they can't stay out of the heat for too long. Even though the foot, that nice blob of clear glass, is really nice and hot, the main bubble was pretty chilly. And we know that because, one, it wasn't glowing, and two, it wasn't really moving at all. And he had to make sure it was not moving and a little bit cooler so they could apply the foot and the bubble wouldn't fall off center. Now that the foot is applied, everything is the right temperature, Michael is getting some more glass out of the furnace. He's shaping it up, but this time it's a lot less glass. So this little tiny piece of glass, in a moment, will be attached to the bottom of that foot that they just made. However, it's not going to be a permanent attachment, because eventually we're going to want this metal pipe to come back off. So that's why he cooled the glass down quite a bit and shaped it before bringing it over this time. Now, even though he cooled it off, both pieces were still over 1,000 degrees, so when they touched together, they stuck immediately. And now that they are stuck together, they have a few moments to ensure that everything is nice and even, it's the right temperature. And now you see Manny putting some water on that line he made earlier. And look how easy it breaks after putting that water on there. So he just did something called thermally shocking the glass. By putting some cold water on that glass that was over 1,000 degrees, he caused the glass to cool down very rapidly in that one particular spot. That rapid cooling caused the glass to become very weak in that area, so by tapping on the metal pipe, he sent a vibration up that pipe into the glass where it broke that really weak point. Now that they've gotten the glass broken, it's flipped around, they can begin heating up the other end, the opening. But that's going to take a moment. So does anyone have any questions while he heats that other end up? Anyone curious about anything so far? Yeah, you can yell at me, don't be shy. Have we ever been burned by the glass? Oddly enough, that's a pretty common question. And not really. Now it happens, of course, when we're learning how to blow glass, you might get tagged by it every once in a while. But really, when glass blowers get burned, it's mostly not from the glass itself. And that's mainly because, well, we know the glass is hot. Look at that thing. It's super hot to the point where it's glowing. But the metal tools, however, those can heat up quite a bit, and we would have no idea or maybe not remember which section was really hot. So sometimes the metal tools can burn us here and there, but it's never really anything too crazy. Now, Manny here just used some tweezers to pinch and stretch at the opening of that glass. What he was doing there is trying to remove some of the extra thick material. That opening is currently the thickest part of the entire vessel, and he wants to even that out a little bit with the rest of the piece. So to do that, he started by pinching and stretching some of that solid glass out away from the rest of the piece, but he has to take a reheat before he does anything else. He wants to make sure the whole piece of glass is still above 1,000 degrees while he's working on it. But he focused most of his heat on the top end where it's more narrow, which is why it's glowing really brightly in that section. It's so hot, in fact, he can use a pair of shears to cut right through that molten glass. Now, that glass was just molten and gooey enough to cut through with a pair of scissors, but the sound it made when it hit the floor was a thud sound. That's the sound something solid makes. And I love when they cut the glass because it is a great point about how little time glass blowers have to work. He was cutting through that glass. As he cut through it, it stiffened up before it even hit the floor. So he only had about maybe 20 seconds to get that cut all the way through. But after the glass has been cut, they can continue moving on with the shape. And the first thing he's going to do is melt away the sharp edge that he just made from cutting through the glass. So using the heat, he can melt that sharp edge, make sure it's nice and soft and melt it away. While he's been doing that, Michael got some more glass out of the furnace and shaped it into a bit of a cone. Now that cone shape tells me they're going to add a wrap of glass. So Manny will grab the glass, he attaches it to the opening, and they will wrap that clear glass bit all the way around that area that he just cut. This is what we refer to as a lip wrap, because that area is referred to as the lip, and they just wrap some glass around it. Again, like I said before, we're very creative when we name things here. But that lip wrap is a nice decorative element. Now we've got this beautiful colored piece of glass with a clear foot and a clear lip wrap to match. Now with that wrap applied, they have to first make sure it's very well fused onto the main piece. So by using the heat, they can melt that together, make sure it's fully attached, and then they will continue working on that opening. Now again, the whole time he's making sure the whole piece stays warm, so that back half is about 1200 degrees, but it's not hot enough to change shape. That way Manny can focus on the opening right here, which will first open up a little bit wider, and then he uses the back of the jacks to make a pour spout. I'll bet some of you were wondering when he cut the glass why he didn't cut it evenly, and that's why, so he could turn the extra bit into a nice spout, which tells us he's going to make a pitcher. Now for a pitcher, he's still missing one crucial component. Anyone know what that component he's missing is? A handle, exactly, and that's what Michael's getting ready right now. So he took some glass from the furnace, nice and clear to match the rest of the added bits. He's going to start to shape that up in a moment. Now for a handle, it's similar to the wrap. However, he doesn't want it to be really coned. He wants it to be a nice, even cylinder. That way, when Manny attaches it to his piece, he can pull that cylinder and stretch it, and it will keep its diameter. It will stay nice and even all the way through. Now he warms it back up a little bit before bringing it to Manny, because the metal table really drew some heat out of that glass. But when it's nice and warmed up again, he brings it over. Manny grabs that piece of glass and attaches it right down to the vessel. Now here, he's determining how much of that glass he wants. So he'll cut some of it off. And now he's got this dangling noodle of fresh molten glass he has to wrangle with a pair of tweezers. So he grabs the end of his tweezers, folds it back down, and we have a beautiful handle on our pitcher. Those are some of the most difficult bits for a glass blower to apply, because it not only has one connection point, but two. And they have to line up nice and even. But there we go. He's got a very beautiful handle on the piece. Now he's going to take a heat here to equalize the temperature of the glass, make sure it's nice and warm. But that handle is solid glass, so it's a bit hotter than the main vessel right now, because the vessel is hollow, so it doesn't hold heat as long. And this allows Manny to adjust that handle just a little bit more, setting the angle, the contour. He can even melt away that sharp spot from where he cut the glass a moment ago. But with the handle finished, that means the pitcher itself is also finished. So he's going to put some water on that connection holding it to the pipe. That thermally shocks it just like before, so he can tap it, and it breaks it off nice and easy with one gentle tap. Now before they put this away, this is a really nice pitcher, so they're using a torch to melt away the final sharp spot from where it was connected. And now it can be delivered to our annealing oven to cool off very slowly for the rest of the night tonight. And with the piece in the oven, we can now give Manny a big warm round of applause and have completed a beautiful picture, folks. Now that it's in the box, there's one more step, but you're not going to want to hang around for that one, because it's going to take us about 12 hours to finish the last step, which is cooling it down. If we put it out on the table here for you all to come up and look at, it's going to crack and break apart in about a matter of minutes, because it cools way too quickly out in the open air. So instead, we'll use that box to cool it down tonight. And since it's in the box, that's the end of the demonstration. They have made a beautiful piece of glass. All we have to do is cool it down. Now, that all happened very fast, so if anyone has questions, you're more than welcome to ask those. I love talking about glass, so is anyone curious about anything?